He told me a little water would put me in my place. He didn't expect I'd already learned to swim. A viewer sent the channel a special story from Leah Porter, who currently lives in Astoria, Oregon. Now, listen to that emotional journey. The dock groaned under our feet like an old man clearing his throat. Out beyond the pilings, the Columbia River heaved under a bruised sky, gulls pinwheeling low as if even they knew to stay close to home. Cole set my keys on the weathered railing and slid them toward the black water with one finger. He didn't turn off the engine of his SUV, didn't look at me, didn't even pretend to be torn. Out, he said, voice soft like he was negotiating a vendor contract. He always saved his polite voice for doing something cruel. Cole, it's going to blow, I said, because the first fat drops had already started needling through my sweater. The ferry's canceled, the marina's closed. I could smell creosote and rain and the sour fear sitting where my ribs met my spine. He eased the keys over the edge. They hit with a small sound, a ping swallowed by the slap of waves. There are lessons, he said, that don't settle in unless you walk them off. Walk them off. 24 miles of cliff road back to our rental. No buses, no taxis. The nearest lighthouse keeper was retired and grouchy, and even the coffee shack shut down when the wind warnings went out. Months ago, I would have begged. I would have apologized for asking why our joint account was suddenly invisible to me, why payroll for his startup posted on a Sunday, why a debit from a Wyoming LLC called Vastleaf showed up like a bruise I didn't remember getting. Instead, I touched the side button on my smartwatch. It double-clicked, and that was enough. Recording, GPS pin, a tiny red pulse against my skin like a second heartbeat. Please, I said, not for him, for the microphone. I made sure it would catch his sentence clean as a bone. I don't understand what I did that merits this. He smiled. You poked. You went sniffing after numbers you couldn't possibly grasp. He leaned in so close I smelled bourbon and mint. You'll be fine. You've always been good at making friends. With that, he slid back into the driver's seat, cologne and leather and money, and pulled away from the dock with a little flourish of gravel. The SUV's taillights smeared red across the wet boards, then vanished into the gray ribbons of rain. I stood there and let the first real sheet of storm slap me. I let it pelt my cheeks until they stung. Then, okay, I'll be honest, I laughed. Just once, a short, shocked sound that puffed out in the cold like smoke. Because I wasn't alone. A fishing horn sounded, 2 short blasts, from behind the shuttered bait shop. A dented Subaru nosed out from the shadow of the crab pots, headlights off, windshield wipers thudding like a heartbeat at rest. The driver's door opened, and Jax unfolded himself from the seat. 6'3" of rangy ex-river ranger with a grin that always looked like a dare. He's my cousin, but the kind who shows up holding jumper cables and a thermos when life's battery dies. Are we rolling? He asked, voice low, like the wind might be wearing a wire. I lifted my wrist. The red dot blinked back. We're rolling. Jax reached for my backpack, the decoy one with a single sweater inside, and handed me the real bag from the back seat. Asha's already at the bungalow, he said. Monique wants you at the diner in 2 hours, and... He tilted his chin toward the river, where the SUV's shape had long dissolved into rain. I'm guessing he thinks you'll be halfway to hypothermia by then. I hugged my arms, more out of habit than cold. He thinks a woman becomes small when she's wet and lost. Jax's eyes went flat. Then let's ruin that theory. We slid into the Subaru. The heaters came on with a tired gasp, hot air smelling faintly of coffee and gear oil. As Jax pulled us away from the dock, thunder stitched behind us like someone slamming a door on the past. I should have cried. I didn't. Maybe I'd run out of tears months earlier, when I found a white envelope tucked into the piano bench labeled "For the Tax Lady" in Cole's handwriting. Inside was a printout of our household budget, my allowance circled in blue like I was 16. Or maybe the tears had turned to something sharp and bright the day I realized that the cookbook he loved on our coffee table had decimals scribbled in the margins, little equations beside recipes like footnotes, in a language only he and Greed understood. Seatbelt, Jack said. And Leah? Yeah? Breathe. I tried. I really did. But when the Subaru crested the hill and the river disappeared behind a stand of dripping firs, my breath came out on a sob I bit in half. I'm okay, I insisted, even though my hands shook in my lap. I'm okay, Jax. I know you are, he said, and flicked on the turn signal like we were just 2 normal people out for pie. That's the part he never calculated. We kept to back roads where blackberry vines clawed low and the shoulders narrowed to nothing. By the time we pulled into the little yellow bungalow I'd rented under my maiden name, the storm had decided to act like the main character. The gutters screamed. The crab flags across the street snapped like reprimands. Inside, the place was warm and smelled like cinnamon. Asha had a way of making even safe houses feel like Sunday kitchens. She stood at the counter in a gray hoodie, curls piled on top of her head, sleeves shoved up past elbows that had built an entire career out of finding what men swore didn't exist. "Phone in the bread box," she said without preamble. "The Faraday bag is in there. I don't care if your mother calls from heaven. No radios on the table today." "Hi to you too," I said, and let her tug me into a hug that I needed more than food or heat. Asha Patel used to work for a tech company that promised to disrupt consumer finance. Translation: they scraped your life to build a shadow of you, habits, haunts, weaknesses, and sold it as a bundle. She left, disgusted, and took those skills to forensic accounting. When I found a recurring debit to Vastleaf LLC, she raised one eyebrow, said, "Cute name," and started a file. "Sit," she ordered now, sliding a mug toward me. "Drink, eat. Then we air traffic control what happens next." Jax leaned against the sink, scanning our little wall of sticky notes. "He pushed her out at the dock," he said, filling her in. "Said she needed a lesson." Asha's mouth thinned. Men who say lesson like that have a major in pedagogy and a minor in cruelty. "He thinks I'll hike the cliff road," I said softly. "He thinks you'll call him," she corrected. I looked down at my hands. Once upon a time, I would have. I grew up in a family where conflict got smoothed over with casseroles and apologies you weren't sure you owed. Cole clocked that the first week. "You're a peacemaker," he'd said, kissing my forehead like a benediction. Later, he weaponized it. "If you've ever had your goodness measured out for you by someone who benefits when you stay small, well, you already know." Asha spun the laptop toward me. The spreadsheet tab was labeled Ren, our little in-joke, because Ren songs are deceptively loud. "I'm going to say something awful," she said gently. "Then I'm going to hand you a biscuit. Okay? You were not just getting financially iced out. He was setting up a ghost version of you." I stared at the screen. There were lines of entries, payroll stubs from a contractor version of me at Vastleaf, scope of work PDFs signed L. Porter, a lease in my name for a co-working desk in Boise, Idaho — I've never been to Boise — and a brand new credit line for business equipment that had already purchased, what? Routers, burners, 3 laptops shipped to a mailbox suite 2 towns over. "He's building a paper trail that says you work for him," Asha said, tapping the line items. "He'll say he paid you for consulting. He'll say you siphoned from him. He's lining up the bowling pins so he can knock them into your lane." My stomach went cold. And if he'd kept me near, tired, apologizing, grateful for whatever house money he tossed in a jar, maybe it would have stuck. Asha handed me the biscuit. I didn't think I was hungry until I took the first bite. "I've seen this playbook," she said, and her voice shook, not with fear, but with something like purpose. "He creates a digital doppelganger. Then, at the moment of his grand escape, the doppelganger takes the fall." "We cut the legs off it," Jax said. "That's what we're doing." Asha clicked to another tab labeled Needles. "Monique filed for an emergency order last night. Financial restraining, temporary possession, no contact. We'll lay the tech trail in front of a judge, but we also need a moment." "What moment?" I asked. Jax reached into the backpack and pulled out a thick envelope. My name was written on the front in my father's tidy engineer hand, Leah. "Read only if necessary." The sight of it sucker punched me. "How—" "Your mom gave it to me the week Cole started working late," Jax said, looking like he wanted to drive back to the dock and throw someone into the river. "She said your dad was worried before he died, that he thought any man who tracked the price of butter by brand was a man who'd tabulate a heart." My throat worked around something that felt like childhood. I slid my thumb under the flap and pulled out copies of documents I hadn't seen in years. The operating agreement for my dad's little wood shop. Turns out it was in my name since college. A quiet trust my grandparents set up to renovate the building that now held... What? An artisan bakery and a hardware store, plus 3 apartments on the 2nd floor. Rent checks that had been going into an account I hadn't touched, because grief made me avoid paperwork. "He knew you'd avoid," Asha said softly. "Cole counted on it. That's why he staged noise around your inbox. Those urgent reminders? 10 to 1 he sent them to bury bank notices." The wind hit the bungalow so hard the windows clicked. I flinched. Jax didn't. We're ahead, he said. That's what matters. The SEC tip's already in motion. The sheriff has the incident report from the doc, and, Leah, he waited until I looked up. We have audio. The smartwatch had dutifully uploaded the doc recording as soon as I hit the Wi-Fi. Hearing Cole's calm voice play back in a warm kitchen felt obscene, like letting mud track across a quilt. You don't have to listen, Asha said. I do, I said, even as my palms went slick. I need to hear exactly what he thinks I am. We listened. The sentence landed the same way it had at the docks. There are lessons that don't settle in unless you walk them off. He'd said it like he was explaining a startup pivot. I could hear my own tight breath, a break in it I hadn't noticed in the moment. Asha toggled to a waveform. He's proud, she said. From the cadence? He wants the story of this to be about control. We'll make it about evidence. My phone, well, the little flip emergency phone Jax had insisted I carry, buzzed. A number I recognized and didn't want to. Riley. Don't, Asha warned. She doesn't call to check on me, I said dully. She calls to collect for him. Riley has been my best friend since freshman year in dorms, where the showers made you feel poor and brave. But somewhere between Cole's IPO that wasn't and his second just the guys fishing trip, Riley started bringing him up first. He's so visionary, she'd say. He's a shark, but in a good way. I told myself she was a little dazzled. I told myself a lot of things. Let it go to voicemail, Jack said. It's better when people tell on themselves. The message transcribed as it came in. Babe, where are you? Cole is frantic. He said you had one of your episodes. Call me. Please. Don't make him think you're spiraling. Episodes. Spiraling. Words that made me want to spit. Or sleep for a week. Asha angled her head. There's your first twist, she said. Not that he stranded you. That he curated your reputation for a rainy day. I took another breath. Okay, then we curate facts. We ate in silence for a few minutes. Cinnamon, butter, rain. Somewhere in the lull, a thought popped into my head like a bubble that refused to sink. Jax? Cole doesn't do anything without a lookout. Jax set his mug down. Go on. At the dock, I said slowly. I felt watched. Not just by him, by a second pair of eyes. He had someone else there. He wanted a witness, not to protect me, to frame the narrative. Asha's gaze was already moving to the window. You think he planted a camera, or a person? Or both, I said. And if I'm right, he thinks he's already telling my story. Asha's smile showed every one of her teeth. Then let's interrupt. I've been asked 100 times what the first red flag was, not the big ones. Anyone can spot those when you're no longer dizzy on love. No, I mean the little flicker, like the first time you notice the fridge hums louder than it used to and realize you've been tuning it out. For me, it was salt. Cole said he loved to cook. On our third date, he made cacio e pepe so glossy I could have used it as a hand cream. He salted the water, like the sea, he said, grinning. It was charming. After we married, the salt turned precise. He'd tap the container 3 times and level it off with a knife. If I salted the onions before they sweated enough, he'd touch my wrist, gentle at first. Not yet, babe. Trust process. Process evolved into policy. Grocery lists became design documents with bullet points. He'd circle the brand he preferred and add a little dot next to items he considered splurges. If I came home with the wrong olive oil, the conversation wasn't about taste. It was about math, percentages, leakage. Leakage. He said it like a diagnosis, not a choice. If this sounds petty, you're right and you're wrong. Because no one wakes up and says, today I'm going to control a woman. They say, today I'll measure things because the world feels slippery and measuring makes me feel like God. The cookbook showed up 6 months in, Old Country Suppers used, with an inscription on the inside cover, to Margo. May your table always hold a surprise. He left it open on the coffee table. He liked to flip through it at night, mark pages with sticky notes. It seemed sweet. I found the first column of numbers next to a blackberry cobbler recipe, 1432, 709, 317, a set of decimals so crisp you'd think they were taken with a ruler. Underneath VB, I can't even tell you why I knew right away I wasn't looking at flour ratios. Maybe because I grew up sniffing out what my father called hum under paint. Maybe because the air in our living room went tight the second I ran my finger under the numbers. You're doing your thinking face, Cole said from the doorway, smile as bright as a commercial. What did I do now? Your book is annotated like a budget, I said, and tried to make it a joke. Should I be concerned you're baking a pie chart? He laughed and crossed the room and kissed the top of my head, so tender I almost cried. "You're cute," he said. "You make everything a metaphor." I let it go, for a while, because I wanted to. Then the first leak. VB turned out to be Vastleaf to Blackridge, a private lender that specialized in bridge lines for entrepreneurs with vision. Cole's line item said, equipment. If by equipment you mean crypto miners tucked in a storage unit behind a gym 2 counties over, then sure. When Asha pulled the utility records, power use at that unit looked like a Christmas parade in July. "Why miners?" I asked, forehead pressed to the cool window glass as the storm did its drumline outside. "Because he wanted a machine that would feel like the future, while it ate the present," Asha said. "And because decentralization sounds like freedom until the wrong person's holding the keys." Another leak, the contractor payments going to our Porter, LLC. Cute. Cole is not creative. He used my initial and my maiden name. The articles of organization were filed at 4:03 a.m. on a Tuesday. He told me he was in Seattle. The signature was mine, except it wasn't. Asha zoomed in. "The R is right-handed," she said. "Leah, you're left-handed." I thought about hands a lot in those weeks, how they learned to tremble, how they learned to stop. And Riley, God, Riley, I'd been giving her the benefit of 10 doubts for nearly a year. She brought Cole up at brunches, defended him in small ways. "He's under so much pressure," she'd say, eyes soft. "You don't know what a Series B does to people." "Yeah, I do. It does nothing to your soul you didn't invite." When the storm knocked out half the town for a night in October, she came over with candles and a bottle of wine and a throw blanket. We sat under it like girls at a sleepover, and I told a small truth. Sometimes I don't know what's real when I'm around him. Riley stroked my hair. She said all the right friend things. Then her phone buzzed on the coffee table and, silly, right? My gut told me to look. I re-R. She's softening. Keep the pressure consistent. Redirect to budgeting when she brings up any big questions. It was Cole's name at the top of that thread. I swallowed the bile. I tucked the moment away like a shard in a pocket. 2 days later, Asha set up a little microphone under the dining room table. "Cat hair and secrets," she said, and we waited. If you've never listened to a friend with the volume turned up on their intentions, I don't recommend it. It's like pulling the drywall off a wall you painted together and finding mold shaped exactly like your laughter. "Budgeting is so empowering," Riley chirped into the mic one evening while Cole was at the gym. I made a spreadsheet for my groceries and realized my anxiety is really about scarcity mindset, not facts. I made the appropriate noises. I even thanked her. Later, Asha played me a separate recording, a small device under the wheel well of my car. Voice activated, planted there who knows when. Riley and Cole in my driveway, his voice low. Make her think it's about food and calendars. Her brain wants small puzzles. I know how this makes me look. Gullible. Maybe I was. Or maybe love tunes your hearing to a specific frequency and you miss the static until someone you trust turns the dial. The night before the doc, I pressed the cookbook flat, snapped photos of every page with numbers, and put the book back exactly where it had sat for months. Then I tucked my wedding ring into the flour canister, because if he was going to search anywhere, he'd search the obvious drawer, the jewelry dish, the coat pocket. I wanted him to wonder where my vows had gone. Jax caught my eye now, in the bungalow, as thunder rolled across the roof like furniture being dragged upstairs. "You okay?" "I'm mad," I said, and felt the words land like an anchor. So mad I could sharpen knives on it. Asha reached across the table and tapped the side of my mug. "Good. It's time to convert anger into motion." A text flashed across the laptop screen, Asha's secure line. The sender ID, CWH Office Cam 3. She clicked. The feed stuttered, then cleared. Cole's office looked like a war room. Whiteboards full of product roadmaps, a glass wall scribbled with a tangle of arrows. Cole stood in front of it, tie skewed, hair damp. He was talking to someone off camera. "Did she call?" he asked. A voice answered, male, nasal, the kind that smiled without ever reaching the eyes. "Not yet." "Good," Cole said. "Let her walk. The river makes people humble." I felt my face get hot. Jax's jaw flexed. Asha slowed the footage and captured stills. Time-stamped, backed up, filed. Then the voice came into frame. Not an employee, not a vendor. Graham Deacon, Cole's mentor, the angel investor who wrote the first check, the man who blessed our wedding by describing the synergy of our union like he'd just closed a deal with God. He clapped Cole on the shoulder. You're doing what needs to be done. Control narrative or it controls you. There it was. The second pair of eyes at the dock, not physically, but through a network of cameras and men who like to watch storms from boardrooms. Asha looked at me. How many surprises do you want today? How many do you have? Riley just Venmo'd Vastleaf LLC $50, she said, reading off her dashboard. Memo. Cake? I said blankly. Code, Asha said. We'll crack it. Jax pushed off the counter. We're late for pie with Monique. I stood, my legs a little unsteady, my anger steady as a lighthouse. Let's go see about telling the story before they do. The diner off Highway 30 has been pouring coffee into fishermen since before my parents were a rumor. The sign flickers open, even when the wind leans hard on the windows. We slid into a corner booth beneath a framed photo of a sturgeon so big it looks like a god. Monique Alvarez was already there, cardigan folded on the seat beside her, like she was saving space for common sense. She doesn't look like a gladiator until you see her eyes when someone lies. Then she looks like the person you hope is on your side when the water rises. Phone's dead? She asked by way of hello. In the bread box, I said. Good. She slid a folder across the table. This is a petition for a financial restraining order, temporary occupancy, and temporary support. I hate the word temporary, but it opens the door we need. We file today. Judge Jensen draws this week. He's not easily charmed by men with pitch decks. I ran my fingers along the edge of the paper like I could read the law by touch. Monique uncapped a pen. Tell me what happened at the dock in 5 sentences. I did. She nodded like she'd already written the screenplay in her head. We'll characterize it as abandonment in dangerous conditions paired with ongoing financial coercion. The recording is gold. We'll have it transcribed. We'll submit the waveform analysis as an exhibit to characterize tone without editorializing. Asha slid in next to her and opened her laptop. I have more gold. Monique leaned, interested. Shiny me. Vastleaf is a pass-through, Asha said, tapping. It roots to a shell in Nevada, which roots to a trust in South Dakota named the Margo Table Trust. Margo, I said, the inscription in the cookbook. Asha said. They're sentimental, these men. They lace their crimes with inside jokes. The trustee on Margo? Graham Deacon? Monique's eyebrows winged up. That's useful. Judges like straight lines between money and men who act like fates. Jack set down the thermos, which the waitress had ignored with a glance that said she doesn't snitch on storm days. We also have a person problem, he said, filling Monique in on Graham's cameo and Riley's cake. Monique scribbled. We'll wall them off early. Protective order will cover associates too. Now, Leah. She turned those steady eyes on me. There's something less exciting but crucial. Your signature. My forged signature, I said. She nodded. And your real one. Start writing your name in 3 controlled sets a day. We'll bring a document examiner. Cole's favorite word is fabricate. Good. He'll accuse you of it. We'll show a baseline. The waitress refilled our cups, her nails that perfect diner red that never chips even when the coffee keeps coming. You want the special, honey? What's the special? I asked, because it felt like good luck to say yes to something. Pie flight. 3 little slices. Weather like this? You need options. Bring 2, Jack said. We ate while Monique told me a story about a man who tried to convince a judge that his wife didn't need the house because her skill set travels. The judge awarded her the house and a portion of his golf membership. You'll want to run, Monique said between bites of Marionberry. You'll want to stay invisible until the worst is over. That's normal. But Leah, part of surviving men who manage perception is standing in a room and letting people see you while the facts stack up in neat lines. It makes a difference. I felt a prickle at the back of my neck. You want me in court today? I want you in filing line, she said. 1 hour. Then back to the bungalow to eat soup and watch rain. Asha's laptop pinged. You're going to love this. She turned the screen so I could see an email chain. The subject line, Stage 2, Narrative. The sender, grahamdeaconcapital.com. The recipient, colavastleaf.io. CC, Riley. And an address I didn't recognize, sloandeaconcapital.com. The first email was 2 sentences. If she calls, cry. If she doesn't, call her mother. Use words like fragile and concern. Then a PDF attachment named talkingpoints.pdf. The bullets were so slick I could see Graham's cufflinks in the margins. Leah has always been artistic, not numbers. Leah has struggled with transitions. Leah sometimes misinterprets facts as feelings. It had spaces for check marks. Monique swallowed slow. We'll admit this under business records. Discovery will be a party. A shadow fell across our table. For a second, instinct made my spine curl. Then I saw the sheriff's badge and the face above it. The good one, not the smug one. Deputy Winfield tipped his hat at Monique. You Alvarez? He asked. I am. You were right about the camera at the dock. He set a Ziploc bag on the table with 2 fingers. Inside lay a tiny lens still wet with river. Found it tucked under the rail, pointing toward where a woman would stand if someone told her to walk it off. Unfairly, I almost cried again, not from fear but relief, evidence, God bless it. Winfield cleared his throat. Also, this came to the station for you. He handed me a folded sheet of paper, my name on the front in my mother's knitting bag script. I opened it with hands that steadied as I read. Leah Bird, Jax told me you might be far away for a bit. I put the key to the upstairs office in the blue teacup. Your father's ledger is behind the panel under the window. If you need to prove a thing, it's there. Love, Mom. Monique's pen stopped. Ledger? My dad's woodshop, I said. He wrote everything by hand even after QuickBooks. Said paper remembers the truth longer. Paper, she said, smiling like a cat at a sunbeam. Paper is my favorite witness. The filing line lived on the 2nd floor of the courthouse beside a plant that had seen too much. Monique stood with me like we were in a grocery queue, chatting about weather and jams. When the clerk took our petition, her nails clicked on the counter. Emergency calendar, she said, stamping it. Judge'll see you at 3. We had 2 hours. Jax drove me to my father's old building, the one I'd been too tender to enter since the funeral. The upstairs office door still had my name on a brass plate my dad had hammered himself. Leah Porter, shop manager. I whispered, sorry, Dad, to the dust, and found the blue teacup where Mom said, chipped hibiscus curling up one side like a smile. The panel under the window slid out with a small squeak that sounded like permission. The ledger was there, dark red cover, edges worn by a decade of hands. Inside, my father's pencil marched across lines in a tidy army. Rent received, repairs paid, notes like fix Mrs. Camacho's hinge. She bakes pies you don't want to miss. But halfway through the book, the pencil changed. The hand imitating my dad's was good. It wasn't good enough. The loops got lazy, the pressure uneven. 2 entries in particular made the hair on my arm stand up. July 14th, loan, Whitman Ventures, $160,000. Secured by second mortgage on 112 River Street. August 2, transfer operating 204500 to Vastleaf equipment authorization Leah P. I pressed my palm to the paper like I could pull heat back into the words. My building, I said quietly. He borrowed against my building. Monique took photos with her phone and then with a camera she'd pulled from a purse that could have held a small lamb. The hand on authorization is not yours, she said. Also see the copier's tell? The gray banding on the bottom border? Whoever scanned this before printing had dirty rollers. We'll find the machine. Asha texted, heads up, Cole's on the move. He just pinged near the marina, then home. He's not calling, he's repositioning. We filed into the courtroom with rain still in our hair. Judge Jensen looked like he moonlighted as a logger. He listened. He asked 2 questions. He signed the order. No contact, he said. Freeze discretionary accounts. Ms. Porter has temporary occupancy of any shared residence. Mr. Whitman may retrieve clothing and personal items with law enforcement escort only. It should have felt like victory. It felt like getting 2 hours ahead on a race you didn't sign up to run. After, Monique squeezed my shoulder. Temporary, she said again, but softer. Temporary like scaffolding. We're building the house. When we stepped back into the corridor, the fluorescent light hummed. A shape detached itself from the doorway down the hall. For a second, I thought Cole and my whole body reached for cover. But the man who stepped forward was younger, nervous, hair sticking up like he'd run his hands through it 1,000 times on the walk over. Ms. Porter, he said, He swallowed, glanced at Jax, then straightened. My name's Sloane Deacon, Graham's nephew. He sent me the talking points. He lifted his phone like a confession. I forwarded them to you. Asha looked at me surprised. I hadn't had time to check the new secure inbox. Sloane shoved his hands into his pockets. I'm sorry, he said, voice breaking. I thought I wanted to be them. I don't. There's a moment when a story tips, when the whole mess of it starts sliding toward truth. You feel it in your teeth. This was mine. Okay, Sloane, I said steadily, even as my pulse drummed like rain. Then help me tell the right version. Sloane inhaled like a swimmer about to push off. He told me I'd make partner by 30, he said as we walked to a quieter hallway where the only witnesses were two vending machines blinking exact change only. Graham, he said he'd make me in his image. I thought... He laughed, a crackling little sound. I thought that was a compliment. Monique moved so that Sloane had to look at me to talk. She has a way of making liars uncomfortable, and truth-tellers feel like they built a cathedral. What do you have? She asked. He held out a folder. Not a digital file, an actual paper folder the color of Manila the world over. Inside were printouts, wire instructions, internal memos, and, in the center, a spreadsheet with a tab labeled Cake. Asha leaned in. Oh, hello? Sloane fidgeted. They use Cake as cover. Whenever they need to route money in amounts too small to spook bank thresholds but big enough to matter if you do it 100 times, they call it Cake. They move it through personal Venmos and Zelles with silly emojis, so auditors don't flag it as business-related. Then they reconcile at the trust level. My anger did something complicated, flared, then cooled into something surgical. So when Riley sent a little cake to Vastleaf, she was participating in a pattern, Sloane said. She gets paid back in premium opportunities, early rounds she'd never sniff otherwise. Graham calls it community contribution. Community, Jax muttered, like a neighborhood watch for wolves. Sloane wiped his palms on his jeans. I'm sorry for my part. I like the feeling of being in the room where decisions feel like magic. Magic is just a trick you don't know the method for yet, Asha said. You learn the method, it becomes work. You ready to do some? He nodded, something like resolve shouldering in. Ask me. Start with Vastleaf, Asha said, opening a new note. Tell me what it claims to be, then tell me what it is. It claims to be a consultancy that helps founders bridge the valley of death between rounds with creative financing. He swallowed. What it is a siphon. It invoices companies for advisory, then those companies recoup from, he looked at me, from employees who don't have power to say no. Pressure masquerading as mentorship. Monique's pen scratched. And Leah's ghost company? Part of the siphon, Sloane said. Graham's idea, but Cole liked it. He wanted redundancies. He said, Sloane's voice altered, mimicking the cadence I knew too well. He said, if she ever decides to go rogue, I want her to believe she did. I let out a sound that was not language. Jax's hand was on my shoulder in a second, not to keep me standing, but to remind me I wasn't the only thing holding me up. Keep going, Monique said. Sloane flipped another page. There's a calendar. They call it the runway bake. Dates when they'll bake a cake. Route 10 to 20 small payments under personal accounts. Each name has an emoji. Riley is, Cole is, Graham is, Leah. He stopped. Leah's a leaf. Of course I was. Okay, Asha said, voice business quiet. We mirror their calendar. We mark the dates with our own flags. We go to the bank with a narrative before they do. Sloane hesitated. There's one more thing. He reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a key. Not a house key. A little silver rectangle with a blue logo. A storage unit brand 2 towns over. He placed it on my palm. This is Unit 416. Graham told Cole to keep anything numerically inconvenient off-site. I only know because he had me drop a box there last month. Heavy. Sounded like hard drives when it moved. Asha's eyes went bright. Numbers with weight. Why give this to me? I asked Sloane softly. He blinked fast, and for the first time I saw how young he really was under the posture. Because my mother raised me to tell the truth even when the truth says you were wrong for a long time, he said. And because... He gestured, uncertain, then settled. Because you didn't look at me like I was garbage when I said my name. I closed my fingers around the key. It bit into my skin in a way that felt very much like a promise. Monique checked the time. We have 40 minutes before your judge's order hits systems cleanly, she said. That window is for doing the thing that keeps me up at night and makes me believe in justice in the same breath. What thing? Jax asked, eager like a dog hearing the rattle of a leash. Beating them to their own evidence, she said, standing. Asha, you and Jax go get that storage unit opened with a deputy present. Leah, she turned to me. You're coming with me to the bank to establish a narrative in person. There's a manager there who thinks Graham walks on water. We'll show him Graham's shoes get wet like everyone else's. I exhaled, and it came out halfway to a laugh. You make crime sound like a flooded basement. That's because it is, she said, smiling feral. You can mop it, but first you shut off the valve. On the sidewalk outside the courthouse, the rain eased to a steady drizzle, the kind that makes the world smell clean even while it's still a mess. Jax pressed the Subaru's fob into my hand. We're a phone call away. Try to like the pie flight lifestyle in the meantime. Asha squeezed my shoulder. We'll text on the secure once we know what the box holds. Monique and I hoofed it the 2 blocks to River and Pine Credit Union, the kind of place where the tellers know your dog's name and the manager knows who owes favors. He came out from his office as soon as he saw Monique like a sunflower seeking light. Ms. Alvarez, he said, breathless. Always a pleasure. Then to me, and you must be Miss Porter. I'm Evan. He ushered us into the office with a glass wall that made me feel like a fish in a nice tank. Monique didn't sit. She does that when she wants a man to feel a little unsteady. Evan, she began lightly, we're here to be good neighbors. He blinked. Oh? We'd like to put a note on a couple of accounts to signal that any unusual activity is to be paused pending court review. He clasped his hands over his tie. We don't freeze without orders. Of course you don't, she said smoothly, setting the signed order on his desk like a queen laying down a card. You do, however, comply with judicial direction, and you do flag internal risk when presented with credible indication of fraud. She slid the Margo Table Trust flowchart across to him, then the cake spreadsheet, then a photo of Cole at the whiteboard next to Graham. Evan's mouth made a small O. Oh, we're going to help you be the hero of your own compliance story, Monique said. Isn't that nice? He swallowed. Very. By the time we walked out, the accounts had notes. My old building's loan had a hold pending authenticity verification, and Evan had offered me a voucher to their community shred day. Like that would make me feel cozy. It did, a little. Small acts that say, we see you. The secure phone buzzed in my pocket as we stepped into the softer part of rain. Asha's message populated in a bubble. Unit opened. Box heavy. Not just drives. Leah, there are ledgers, not copies, originals, and there's something else. A brown envelope with your name. Do you want me to open? Monique watched my face and read the question before I said it. Yes, she said, you want to open. I typed with fingers that had learned to stop shaking at exactly the speed of a woman who intends to be believed. Open it. A photo came through. My name, Leah, printed in Cole's careful block letters like a threat pretending to be a gift. Then the second photo, the first page inside, 3 words, all caps. Planse Costa. Monique met my eyes. We may have just found the exit he built for himself. The secure line buzzed again, and this time the text wasn't from Asha. It was from a number I didn't recognize. The message was 4 words that punched exactly where I live. Mom's with me, Riley. I stopped so fast a woman with a stroller swerved around me. The world narrowed to that single sentence. Mom, with Riley. Riley who brought candles and wine and cake emojis. Monique's hand was already on my arm, anchoring. Look at me, she said. Riley doesn't hold the cards she thinks she does. I swallowed. Maybe, but she's holding my mother. Monique's jaw worked. Then we changed the plan. The rain was light now. The street smelled like cedar and new paper. I tucked Plan C into my coat, squared my shoulders, and told the part of me that wanted to curl small and cry that she could have 5 minutes later, in the car, with the heater on and the radio loud. Okay, I said, let's go get my mother. When betrayal comes from a friend, it doesn't roar. It whispers like an open door in a quiet house. Riley's text, Mom's with me, sat on my screen like a snake coiled under the covers. For a second, the world narrowed. My mother's silver hair, her hands that still knit muscle memory even when her memory itself frayed, and Riley's smile that had once meant refuge. Monique steered me under the courthouse awning, out of the drizzle. She wants you rattled, she said. She knows mothers are leverage. Don't give her that. But what if she is with her, I whispered. Then we make Riley prove it. I called. My hand didn't shake. My voice did. She answered on the second ring, sugar in her tone. Leah. Finally, I was worried sick. Where's Mom? I asked flat. She's safe, Riley said. You were getting unstable. Cole said you'd make reckless choices. We thought she should be with me until you calmed down. There it was, unstable, we thought. The script from Graham's talking points. I glanced at Monique, who mouthed, keep her talking. Put her on, I said. Oh, she's resting, Riley cooed. The storm wore her out. You know how she is. I felt my nails cut crescents into my palm. Funny, because her facility called me this morning. She hadn't left. A beat of silence. Then, Leah, you're confused. I hit the side button on my watch. Confused about what? I asked, voice low. That your father's ledger is evidence. That Cole's documents are forgeries. That you're strong enough to do this alone. Riley's voice trembled now, her mask cracking. Come meet me. I'll explain everything. Unit 416, you know the one. Monique's brows shot up. She scribbled a note. She doesn't know we already have the box. Fine, I said into the phone, making my voice small. Text me the address. When I hung up, Monique blew out a long breath. She just confirmed two things. One, she's part of the storage scheme. Two, she's running out of script. Asha's secure ping buzzed again. Box contents. Ledgers, plus drives, plus brown envelope. Plan C detailed. Includes tickets to Costa Rica. Also, recordings. He taped you, Leah. Dozens. We'll catalog. The storm outside had softened to a mist, the kind that feels like the sky is holding its breath. I looked at Monique. They've been building my collapse, recording me like I'm the liability. And now, she said fierce, we flip it. Their evidence becomes ours. But my chest stayed tight with one single thought. If Riley has Mom, if she even touched her, I will burn the whole plan down to ash to get her back. When betrayal comes from a friend, it doesn't roar. It whispers like an open door in a quiet house. Riley's text, Mom's with me, sat on my screen like a snake coiled under the covers. For a beat, the world narrowed. My mother's silver hair, the way her hands still knit on muscle memory even when the pattern slips, and Riley's smile that used to mean refuge. Funny how a smile can age into a mask. Monique tugged me under the courthouse awning where rain thinned to a lace. She wants you rattled, she murmured. Leverage is louder when you're scared. But what if she is with her? It came out smaller than I liked. Then we make Riley prove it. I called. My hand didn't shake. My breath did. She answered on the second ring, syrupy. Leah, finally, I've been worried sick. Where's Mom? I asked, flat as a ruler. She's safe, Riley said. You were getting unstable. Cole said you might make reckless choices. We thought she should be with me until you calm down. There it was, unstable. We thought. Graham's talking points read out loud with a bow on top. Monique tapped my wrist. Keep her talking. Put her on, I said. Oh, she's resting, Riley purred. Storm wore her out. You know how she is. I let a beat stretch. That's funny, I said, because the facility's nurse just told me she hasn't left today. She hadn't. I'd texted the head nurse earlier. Belt, suspenders, truth. Silence, then harder. Leah, you're confused. I double-clicked the watch. Recording. Confused about what? That your father's ledger is evidence? That Cole's documents are forgeries? That you're strong enough to do this alone? Her veneer cracked. I could hear the breathy little laugh she does when she's cornered. Just meet me. I'll explain everything. Unit 416. You know the one. Monique's brows shot up. She scribbled, She thinks the box is intact. Good. We'd already opened it with a deputy and a chain of custody form that would make a judge purr. Fine, I whispered into the phone, letting a tremor rough the edge. Text me the address. I hung up and the courthouse noise came back in. The printer's cricket chirp, someone swearing softly about parking. Asha's secure ping vibrated in my coat. Box, Ars ledgers, plus drives, plus Plan C, Costa. Also, voice files. He taped you, Leah. We'll catalog. I swallowed. Of course he taped me. Of course love, weaponized, would carry a mic. They're building a museum of my collapse, I said, curating exhibits labeled fragile. And we're changing the plaques, Monique said fierce. But first, your mother. I called the facility again, this time on speaker. Hi, this is Leah Porter. Can you confirm Mom's room? The head nurse Vicky, the one with sunflower pens and a spine of steel. My shoulders dropped an inch. Thank you. You're welcome. Oh, someone called earlier asking if Margaret had a standing visitor pass. Sounded off. We flagged it. Name? Wouldn't say. Said they were family. I told them family knows how to prove it. Monique and I exchanged a look. Riley's fishing, she said. She doesn't have your mother. She wants to have your fear. I should have felt only relief. What I felt was relief braided with anger so clean it rang. Then we stopped letting her borrow my pulse. We stepped into the drizzle and crossed to the Subaru. Monique slid into the passenger seat, already texting. I'm pulling Deputy Winfield. Unit 416 is his beat. He'll meet us there. Jackson Asha? I asked. Driving the evidence to the bungalow, she said. Chain of custody held. Asha wants a sandwich. That's how you know she's happy. I laughed in a way that tasted like metal. Happy is a strong word. Happy for Asha is a spreadsheet with an ending, Monique said. We're close. On the drive, the river ran high and sullen to our left. Gray on gray, then the shock of a red kayak cutting the water like a sentence finally landing where it should. I gripped the wheel and did something I haven't done since I was 9 and praying for a B on a math test. I talked to my father out loud. "Dad," I said, and felt silly and not silly, "you were right about paper. It remembers the truth longer." Monique's hand found my forearm for a second. "He'd be obnoxiously proud," she said. "He'd make bad coffee and refuse to call a lawyer until your mother smacked him with a dish towel." I smiled, which hurt and helped, and turned into the gravel lot of North Fork Storage. The unit sat in 2 patient rows, doors the color of toothpaste under a sky like a bruise. Deputy Winfield's cruiser idled near the office. He climbed out, hat low, mouth set. "You brought friends," he said, nodding at Monique. "Good. We like witnesses with law degrees." He glanced at me softer. "You sure you want to be the one to open the door?" "I've been on the other side of doors too long," I said. "I'm due." He didn't smile exactly, but the lines around his eyes eased. He led us past the office cat asleep on yesterday's newspaper, down the row to 416. The lock was new, the cheap kind men buy when they think new equals secure. Winfield recorded the date and time, asked me to hold the key up to the body cam, then nodded. "Ready when you are." The lock popped like a soda cap. He hauled the door, and the unit breathed cold at us. Inside, the cardboard box we'd already cataloged, a gunmetal Pelican case big enough to hide a temper, and a Rubbermaid tub labeled in Cole's tidy block letters, "Kitchen." The tub made me want to throw up. The man could engineer my downfall and still inventory my spatulas. Monique clocked everything with her phone. "Kitchen tub first," she said, pointing. "Liars are messy when they pretend to be neat." Winfield slid it forward with his boot, crouched, and cracked the lid. On top, the cookbook. The old country suppers I'd put back on my coffee table last night like a goodbye. My breath snagged. "Careful," Monique said, and he was. He lifted it like a relic and handed it to me through a veil of time. It was heavier than memory. I flipped, fingers ghosting over the familiar decimals. Then, new pages. A second set of numbers, smaller hand, different ink, tucked into the pocket at the back. Titled, "Margo Table, Slice Schedule." Each slice had a date and a list of emoji. "The cake," I whispered. "He wrote the recipe." Monique's mouth curved in something that wasn't joy, but wore its coat. "And you just found it in a tub labeled kitchen. I will never get tired of hubris." A shadow fell across the unit mouth. Winfield straightened as a silver SUV nosed into the lane like a shark sniffing chum. The window rolled down, and Riley leaned across to peer out, mouth already forming the word Leah like she owned it. "Hey!" she trilled, bright, too bright. "There you are, I was so— Oh!" She spotted the deputy. "Officer, we were just—" "Afternoon," Winfield said, voice polite as a fence. "We're in the middle of a lawful search." Riley's eyes flicked to the cookbook, to my hands, to the open box. Something mean slid behind her face. She parked, all smooth motions, and stepped out with a little shiver that said, "See what I endure for you?" "Leah," she breathed, taking a step my way like she might tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. "You look tired. You don't have to do this. Cole is— well, he's upset, but he loves you." There it was, the soft power, the honey he fed me using her spoon. I lifted my wrist toward her, watch blinking its little red eye. "Say that again," I said gently, for the record. A flinch, tiny, then she laughed, brittle. "You always were dramatic." Her gaze landed on the Pelican case. "What's that?" "Evidence," Monique said, all sugar knives. "We'll be sure to share discovery with your counsel when you get one." Riley's chin tipped, defensive. "I don't need a lawyer. I'm just a friend." Winfield made a note. "Ma'am, earlier today did you text Ms. Porter claiming you were with her mother?" Color climbed her throat. I was concerned. So that's a no." She crossed her arms, then uncrossed them, then let them dangle like a marionette, unsure of the next scene. "You don't understand," she said, voice thinning. "Graham asked for help. He said Leah needed support narratively. He said if we didn't steer, she'd spiral and ruin Cole's reputation and, I asked softly. "And crash the company," she finished, looking miserable and angry in the same breath. "Do you know how many jobs depend on him?" I breathed out slow. "Do you know how many truths depend on me?" For a heartbeat, we just stared at each other, 2 girls who'd once split a dorm mini-fridge and now stood separated by a Pelican case full of crimes. The wind ran its fingers over the storage doors. Somewhere, a gull complained. Riley blinked first. "You're not well," she muttered, reaching into her purse. Winfield stepped forward, hand up. "Ma'am, keep your hands where I can see them." She went very still, then, carefully, pulled out a key fob, not to the unit, to a safe. She held it like a talisman. "Graham gave me this," she said. "Said if things got messy, he'd call and I'd bring him the case." She nodded at the Pelican. "I didn't look, I swear." Monique cleared her throat. "Deputy, please note the chain. Ms. Riley, did Graham ask you to move evidence across county lines?" Riley's face crumpled. "He said cake. He said it was just dessert." I almost laughed, somewhere between a sob and a bark. "It's not cake, Rye, it's money stolen in sprinkles." Her bottom lip trembled. For a second, small mercy rose up in me like a reflex. Then I smelled the dock again, heard Cole say, "Walk it off," and let Mercy sit down and be quiet. "Officer," Monique said crisp, "we'd like to secure the case and the cookbook, and we'll need Ms. Riley's written statement about attempted removal of materials." Winfield nodded. "Ma'am?" He gestured toward the cruiser. Riley looked at me, something pleading and furious and ashamed all crowded together, then at the deputy. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. "I just liked the room where decisions feel like magic," I said, finishing for her. I thought of Sloane, of his shaking hands, and the moment he chose truth. "You can still step out of it." Her shoulders slumped. "I don't know how." Monique's voice softened a shade. "You start by writing." Riley climbed into the back seat, small for the first time in years. Winfield shut the door gently, like he was closing a chapter. Monique squeezed my elbow. "We convert fear into paper, paper into orders, orders into safety." She tipped her chin at the Pelican. "Ready to see inside?" I nodded, and for the first time all day, the nod felt like a door I wanted to open. The storm had simmered to drizzle, but my pulse beat like lightning trapped under skin. Deputy Winfield set the Pelican case on the hood of his cruiser, body cam tilted, chain of custody clipboard ready. Monique stood with her arms folded, chin up like she'd dared the clouds to break again. "Ready?" Winfield asked. I nodded. My voice wouldn't come, so the nod had to do. The latches snapped open with a sound that felt louder than thunder. Inside, layers of foam cradled what looked like a hoarder's shrine to paranoia. 2 external hard drives, both labeled in Cole's block letters, Journal. 3 spiral notebooks, each tabbed with sticky notes. Slice, runway, exit. A leather folio stamped with a Costa Rican Airlines logo. Monique slipped on gloves from her bag. She's the kind of lawyer who carries them like other women carry lipstick. "Notebook first," she instructed. I pulled out exit. My name was on the inside cover in blue ink. Underneath, Leah. Exit. Cover. The pages read like the diary of a general planning a retreat. Flights booked under my name, a lease application in San Jose signed Leah Porter, and a credit card statement showing my charges, except I'd never been to Costa Rica, let alone bought snorkeling gear in Jocko. My stomach twisted. "He wasn't just running," I whispered. "He was planning to frame me as the one who ran with the money." "Exactly," Monique said, eyes bright with fury. "He builds the illusion you disappeared with him, or without him. Either way, you're the scapegoat." Winfield lifted the folio. Inside were 2 passports, one with Cole's smug photo, the other a fake with mine. The picture was me, but older, haggard, grainy enough to look like it had been lifted from a DMV database. Name, Lena Price. I couldn't breathe for a second. He'd given me a fake life, ready to drop me into it like a coffin. And then my phone buzzed, the little emergency flip, not the smartwatch, no caller ID. Monique motioned to let it ring out. Winfield raised a brow. I pressed answer anyway. "Leah," Cole's voice, smooth as bourbon, poured straight into my ear. "I see you found the kitchen." My chest iced. "Where are you?" He chuckled, lazy. "On a call you can't trace. You think Graham didn't prepare me for amateurs? But here's what you don't know. Costa Rica isn't a plan. It's the plan. You were supposed to be in it with me, smile for the cameras, play the part. But now..." His voice sharpened, cutting. "Now you're just noise." I glanced at Monique. She mouthed, "Stall him." "You really think you'll make it out?" I asked, steadying my voice. "I don't think," Cole said. "I calculate. And right now, Leah, my math says you've got about 6 hours before this storm washes away every scrap of your little case. Enjoy your head start." The line went dead. Winfield swore under his breath. "He knows you're here." "He's baiting," Monique said. Men like him always want to remind you they're in the room even when they're not. But I could still hear his voice in my ear, velvet and venom. You were supposed to be in it with me. And for the first time since the dock, I realized something awful and true. I wasn't just the target. I'd been the alibi all along. Deputy Winfield slid the hard drives into evidence bags, the Ziploc sound crisp as judgment. Monique leaned against the cruiser, jotting notes on the clipboard like she was writing scripture. The drizzle kept steady, dotting the hood with tiny mirrors. "Two labeled journal," Winfield said. "That's a man who wants to talk to himself even when no one's listening." "Or a man who plans for someone to find his narrative," Monique corrected. She turned to me. "Leah, you need to be prepared. What's on these won't be pretty." The county's tech team cracked the first drive in a mobile lab, the screen filled with audio files, each tagged with dates. Asha, patched in from the bungalow, read them aloud through speakerphone. "Dinner argue sept 14 wave. Market party octizero wave. Doc lesson wav." My stomach lurched. He'd catalogued my life like a zoo exhibit. Asha clicked 1. Dinner, argue, sept 14. Cole's voice filled the van, silky and cold. "Leah, when you question me in front of people, you look small. Do you like looking small?" Then my voice, thin, trying to reason. His laugh after, recorded cruelty. Winfield muttered, "This isn't just spousal abuse. This is documentation for leverage." The second drive was worse. Video files. Grainy but clear enough. Me at the piano, me folding laundry, me in the kitchen chopping onions. Asha confirmed. Hidden cameras, house angles. One clip made my throat close. Me asleep. Cole whispering into the lens. "She'll believe anything, even this." Monique tapped her pen against the clipboard. "Judges don't like men who record wives like exhibits. This will burn him faster than the financials." But the third twist came when Asha froze mid-sentence. "Wait, there's a folder he didn't label. It's all PDFs." She clicked. On the screen, contracts with Graham Deacon's signature. Wire transfers between Margo Table Trust and Shellcore in Panama. A memo titled CWH Stage 3. Monique's eyes lit like a struck match. "Graham left fingerprints." "Thought he was untouchable," I whispered. "They always do." Winfield rubbed his jaw. "This isn't just coal anymore. This is interstate. Feds will eat it up." Monique tucked the Costa Rica folio back into the case. "Good, because tomorrow morning we're not just walking into family court. We're walking in with Exhibit A through Z." The courthouse smelled like rain-soaked paper and old varnish. Judge Jensen called the emergency hearing. Cole arrived in a navy suit, hair slicked. Graham 2 steps behind him like a proud uncle. Riley was absent, still writing her statement under Winfield's watch. When I walked in with Monique, I felt Cole's eyes like a hook, his jaw flexed. Graham whispered something in his ear. They both smirked, certain the room was theirs. But when Monique laid the first exhibit, a printed transcript of doclesson.wav, the smirks faltered. Cole's voice echoed through the courtroom. "There are lessons that don't settle in unless you walk them off." Judge Jensen's brow furrowed. "Mr. Whitman, is this your voice?" Cole cleared his throat, taken out of context. Then Monique produced the ledger from my father's shop. "And this, Your Honor, is how context looks on paper." For the first time in years, Cole didn't have words. Graham leaned forward, whispering furiously. The courtroom quiet held, and I realized the storm hadn't ended. It had just moved indoors. Courtrooms don't hum, they throb. Every cough, every shuffle, every pen tap becomes percussion in a symphony of judgment. I sat at the petitioner's table with Monique at my side, her posture a masterclass in calm aggression. Across from us, Cole adjusted his cufflinks like a man who still believed tailoring could buy him absolution. Beside him, Graham Deacon leaned back, smile fixed, the kind that hides knives. Judge Jensen peered over his glasses. "Mr. Whitman, Ms. Porter has provided recordings, ledgers, and notarized statements. Do you wish to respond?" Cole opened his mouth, but Graham raised one manicured hand. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, voice oiled. "What we have here is a case of an imaginative spouse weaving stories from scraps. Ms. Porter has always been artistic. She interprets feelings as facts. We can provide expert testimony regarding her instability, including records of counseling." The words landed like stones, exactly lifted from Graham's talking points. My stomach clenched, but Monique only smiled thin. "Ah, yes," she said, "the fragile artist narrative. Your Honor, I have an exhibit that may interest you." She clicked the remote. The projector flickered to life. On screen, the Stage 2, narrative email chain, Graham's name glowing in the header. Judge Jensen leaned forward. Mr. Deacon, is this your correspondence? For the first time, Graham's smirk cracked. Those are drafts, taken out of context. Context is exactly what this provides, Monique interrupted, her voice silk over steel. These emails outline a deliberate attempt to discredit my client using fabricated language about her mental health. A strategy, not reality. The gallery stirred. Cole's jaw twitched. Graham's eyes narrowed like a cat cornered. And then, like a well-timed twist in a movie, the courtroom doors swung open. Deputy Winfield stepped in, guiding Riley by the elbow. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, hair damp, eyes rimmed red. Your Honor, Winfield said, holding up a folder. This witness requested to submit a voluntary statement. Graham straightened, fury flashing, but Riley beat him to it. She stepped forward, voice trembling but loud enough to carry. I lied for them. I pretended Leah was unstable. Graham gave me scripts. Cole told me it was for her own good. But I saw the ledgers. I saw the videos. And I can't lie anymore. She opened the folder. Inside, a written confession, signed and time-stamped. They used me to gaslight her, she said, tears catching. I thought I was helping a friend. I was helping a monster. Gasps rippled. Cole's face drained of color. Graham muttered something sharp, but the judge's gavel cracked. Silence. Judge Jensen turned to Riley. Ms. Harris, you understand perjury carries consequences? She nodded. I'd rather face those than live with what I've done. The judge absorbed that, then looked back at Cole and Graham. His voice dropped into the register of finality. This court does not take kindly to schemes woven in shadow. The tide has turned. For the first time, I saw fear in Graham's eyes, the kind of fear men like him spend fortunes trying to avoid. And I thought, finally, the storm is striking the right shore. The gavel cracked once more, sharp as thunder over the Columbia. Judge Jensen's voice rolled steady. Given the evidence, financial documents, audio recordings, corroborated testimony, and now Ms. Harris's confession, this court grants the emergency order in full. Effective immediately, Mr. Whitman is barred from accessing joint accounts, properties, or trust funds. Ms. Porter is granted exclusive use of the marital residence. Temporary spousal support is set at $12,000 per month. The pen in his hand scratched across the order like a knife closing a wound. Cole shot up, face mottled red. 12,000? For her? She doesn't need— Sit down, Mr. Whitman, Judge Jensen barked. But Cole wasn't listening. His voice pitched into a snarl. She's staging all this! She wanted me gone! This is entrapment! The gallery gasped. Graham reached to yank him down, hissing something through clenched teeth. But Cole yanked free, pointing across the courtroom at me. You think you're clever, Leah? Recording me? Stealing files? You admit she recorded you? Monique cut in smoothly, her pen tapping. The judge's eyes sharpened. So noted for the record. Cole froze, realizing too late. His fists balled at his sides, shoulders heaving like a man who'd sprinted into his own trap. And then the back doors opened again. Not Riley this time. 2 federal agents in dark suits stepped in, followed by a man I recognized only from headlines. Special Agent Marco Jimenez, Financial Crimes Division. Your Honor, Jimenez said with a nod. Apologies for the intrusion. We have a sealed warrant for the arrest of Mr. Cole Whitman and Mr. Graham Deacon on charges of wire fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement. Documents provided by Ms. Porter's counsel corroborated ongoing investigations. The courtroom turned electric, gasps, murmurs, reporters scribbling in the back row. Graham went rigid, his mask slipping for a bare second. This is highly irregular. The judge leaned forward, almost amused. So is siphoning millions through cake emojis, Mr. Deacon. Laughter rippled before the gavel restored silence. The agents approached. Cole backed up a step, wild-eyed. You can't do this. My company needs me. Investors. Your investors will meet us downtown, Jimenez said flatly, snapping cuffs onto his wrists. The clink rang like justice. When Graham tried to stand, the second agent moved just as fast, twisting his arms back, reading rights in a voice that cut through his protests. Cole's eyes locked on me as they hauled him toward the doors. No more smirk, no more smooth voice, just raw venom. You did this, he spat, and for the first time I didn't flinch. No, I said clearly, letting the whole room hear. You did this to yourself. The gavel came down one last time. Court adjourned. The storm had broken, and for once it wasn't on me. Courthouses breathe differently once the handcuffs click. The murmurs swell, reporters surge, phones flash like lightning. I stood at the petitioner's table while Monique gathered papers with the grace of someone collecting trophies. Jack squeezed my shoulder as we filed out, a silent "we did it." But the battle wasn't over. The storm was just moving into the headlines. By the time we reached the courthouse steps, a sea of microphones waited. "Ms. Porter, did your husband abandon you at the dock? Is it true his mentor was part of the fraud? Are you seeking custody of the trust accounts?" Monique's voice cut through the noise like a lighthouse beam. "No further comment. Ongoing federal investigation." She shielded me with her body, guiding me into Jax's Subaru while Winfield held the press back. Inside the car, my emergency phone buzzed. A text from the memory care facility. "Your mother is asking for you. She says she remembers something important." I swallowed. "Drive to the facility," I told Jax. The hall smelled of lavender spray and boiled coffee. Mom sat by the window, her crocheting in her lap, hands steady today. When she saw me, her eyes lit with that rare clarity that felt like a gift. "Leah Bird," she said, "did you get the key?" I pulled it from my pocket. "Yes, Mom, the blue teacup, the ledger." She nodded, relief softening her shoulders. "Good. Your father thought Cole would try to bury us in papers. That's why he left duplicates in the safety box. But there's more." She fumbled in her cardigan pocket and pressed a thin envelope into my palm. Inside, photocopies of letters, all in Graham's hand, dated years before I ever met Cole. They weren't just about Cole. They mentioned other young entrepreneurs, other mentee husbands being guided toward shell trusts and siphons. Names I didn't recognize. Cities across 3 states. Mom's voice dropped. "Your father suspected Graham was building an empire of shadows. He told me once, 'Deacon's not investing in ideas, he's investing in control.'" My skin prickled. This wasn't just about Cole. This was a lattice, a network. That night, Asha pored over the letters in the bungalow, her laptop glowing against storm-dark windows. "Leah," she said slowly, "this isn't a single fraud case. It's a pattern. Graham's been seeding protégés for decades. Cole was just one branch." I stared at the papers, my father's scrawled notes in the margins. "Watch Whitman, watch Deacon. They breed debt like cattle." A fresh chill cut through me, because if this was true, then today's courtroom victory was only Act 1. The storm had a deeper current, and I'd just been pulled into it. The bungalow felt less like a safe house that night and more like a command center. Asha had spread Graham's letters across the dining table, each one anchored with mugs or coasters, as though weight could stop the truth from blowing away. "Look at this pattern," she said, tracing her finger down one page. "Every mentee Graham praises, they all opened shell trusts within 6 months. Denver, Boise, Portland. It's a conveyor belt." Jax leaned against the counter, arms folded. "How many women like Leah are out there, stranded at docks, erased on paper, made the scapegoat?" The question landed heavy. That's when the knock came. 3 quick raps, 1 pause, 2 more. The code Jax insisted we all memorize. He opened the door, cautiously, and there she was, my sister, Jennifer. Her face was pale, eyes swollen. In her hands, a grocery bag stuffed with manila folders. "I couldn't carry this anymore," she blurted. "He used me, Leah. I thought I was helping. I was drowning in debts and coal. He made it sound like salvation." I felt my knees wobble. Jennifer, my own blood. The one I'd covered for when her gambling spiraled. The one I defended when Mom wanted to cut her off. "You gave him information," I said, voice tight. She nodded, shame cutting her chin down. "About Dad's trust, about Mom's accounts. He said it was to keep you safe, that you were fragile and he needed to protect you. I wanted to believe him." Jax cursed under his breath. Asha snatched one of the folders, flipping it open. Inside were printouts of emails between Jennifer and Cole, some with Graham copied. My chest went cold. "He asked me about dates, about properties, even about Dad's will," Jennifer whispered. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know how far it went until I saw the news today. Leah, I'm so sorry." I should have screamed, should have thrown her out into the storm. But instead, I just asked, "Why now? Why bring this tonight?" She reached into the bag and pulled out a small black notebook. "Because Graham called me this morning. He said if Cole goes down, you're next. That he'd make sure the family name was stained. I realized he never cared about me, or you. He just wanted control." Monique, who had been listening quietly from the sofa, finally spoke. "Jennifer, if you're serious about helping, you'll sign an affidavit and hand that notebook over to the feds. It might lessen your exposure." Jennifer's eyes brimmed. "I'll do anything, just don't cut me out completely, Leah." I looked at her, my sister, my betrayer, my unexpected witness. Part of me wanted to hug her, another part wanted to lock the door behind her. My next choice wasn't about survival anymore. It was about whether I could let forgiveness and fury sit at the same table. And as the storm outside thickened again, I knew that choice would shape not just my story, but every woman's who came after. The next morning, the bungalow smelled like burnt toast and tension. Monique had her blazer on before sunrise, Asha was pacing with a coffee mug clutched like a lifeline, and Jack sat sharpening pencils with the intensity of a soldier cleaning his rifle. At 9 sharp, 2 black SUVs pulled into the gravel lot. Special Agent Marco Jimenez stepped out, the same man who had cuffed Cole in court. Behind him came a younger woman in a navy suit, Agent Teresa Cho, eyes sharp, movements brisk. "We'll keep this informal," Jimenez said once we were gathered around the dining table littered with evidence. "But we need to understand the scope." Yasha slid the hard drives and Graham's letters across. "It's bigger than Cole," she said. "Deacon's been grooming men for decades. This is systematic." Agent Cho nodded, already flipping through. "Shell trusts, straw companies, classic laundering. If half of this checks out, we're not talking about one case. We're talking about a ring." Then Jimenez looked at Jennifer. "And you?" Jennifer swallowed, clutching the black notebook. "I was stupid. I thought Cole cared. He paid off my debts. He asked me for family details, and I gave them. But I didn't know about this." Her voice cracked. "I swear." Cho didn't flinch. "Ignorance isn't immunity, but cooperation helps." Jennifer's hands shook as she pushed the notebook forward. "Everything I knew I wrote down. Names, dates, phone calls, even things I overheard Graham say to Cole." Jimenez flipped to the first page. His brows lifted. "This is thorough." He glanced at me. "Your sister's testimony could tilt the balance, but it comes at a cost." "What cost?" I asked, throat tight. "She'll be admitting her role. There's exposure here, maybe not prison, but fines, probation, public shame." The room went still. Jennifer's lip trembled, but she nodded. "I'll take it. I deserve it." For the first time, I believed her. Jimenez leaned forward. "And you, Ms. Porter, are you ready to be more than a victim? We'll need you as a cooperating witness. You've got recordings, ledgers, first-hand knowledge. This ring hides behind women, wives, sisters, friends. Your voice could crack it." I looked down at my hands, remembering how small they'd felt on the dock when Cole tossed my keys into the water. Now they rested on paper thick with evidence, with names that stretched beyond Oregon, beyond Cole, beyond me. I took a breath. "Yes," I said, "I'll testify. I won't just survive him. I'll bury the whole system he built." Jimenez smiled faintly. "That's the spirit. Let's burn their playbook." For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was treading water. I felt like I was steering the tide. By the time the FBI SUVs rolled away, the bungalow no longer felt like a hideout. It felt like the eye of a hurricane. Reporters were circling like gulls over a fishing boat. Neighbors were whispering, and social media was gnawing on my name like it was fresh meat. "Your face is trending," Asha muttered, scrolling. "Doc wife, storm survivor, even a parody account, don't ask." I should have been mortified. Instead, I felt oddly steady. Because for once, the narrative wasn't his, it was mine. That afternoon, Monique staged what she called a controlled leak. We released a single statement to the press. I was abandoned in the rain, but I didn't drown. This case is not just about my husband, it's about a network that feeds on silence. And I refuse to be silent anymore. The quote landed everywhere, morning shows, op-eds, even talk radio. Suddenly I wasn't just Leah Porter, fragile artist. I was a whistleblower, a witness, a threat. And Graham knew it. That evening, Jennifer's phone buzzed with an unknown number. She went pale and handed it to me. A voicemail. I pressed play. "Jennifer, it's Graham. I know you think you've picked your side, but understand this. I built the table. I decide who eats. If you think you and your sister can bring me down, you're children playing with matches. You'll burn before I do." The line clicked dead. Jack swore and slammed his fist against the counter. "He's rattled. That's a tell." Monique smirked. "It's also a felony, witness intimidation." Asha was already transcribing. "And it ties him to Jennifer directly. Perfect." But I couldn't shake the chill in his voice. Graham wasn't like Cole. Volatile, emotional, careless. Graham was ice, calculating. A man who turned storms into investments. That night, as the rain tapped the bungalow roof, I stood at the window and whispered into the dark, "You don't own this story anymore." Because for the first time, the world wasn't listening to Graham's voice. It was listening to mine. The subpoena arrived on a Monday, tucked into a manila envelope stamped with a seal I'd only ever seen on the evening news. United States Senate Committee on Banking and Fraud. National spotlight, Monique murmured, smoothing the letter across the bungalow's dining table. Graham won't sit still for this. He'll strike before he lets you testify. She was right. By Wednesday, op-eds bloomed in every major paper, quoting anonymous sources, calling me a bitter wife inventing conspiracies. Cable shows debated my sanity like it was a sport. One pundit waved a copy of my old gallery program and sneered, "She paints rain clouds. Maybe she sees storms where there aren't any." I almost laughed. The smear was textbook Graham, but it didn't sting the way it used to, because Thursday morning, Agent Jimenez called. We traced campaign donations. Graham funneled $500,000 through shell packs. Senators on the committee will want answers. Asha grinned feral. He salted his own battlefield. The hearing loomed a week later. Washington felt like another planet, marble halls echoing with footsteps, cameras like eyes that never blinked. When my turn came, I sat behind the microphone, palms flat, heart steady. "Ms. Porter," the chairman asked, "do you believe your husband acted alone?" "No," I said clearly. "I believe he was one branch on a tree Graham Deacon planted decades ago, and I believe that tree is still standing." The room hushed, senators leaned in, reporters scribbled. For once, the silence worked for me. Across the chamber, Graham sat with his attorneys, his face still and pale. For the first time, he didn't look like a kingmaker. He looked like a man watching the ground shift beneath him. Afterward, outside on the Capitol steps, Jennifer slipped her hand into mine. "You did it," she whispered. "Not yet," I said, "but we're not drowning anymore. We're building boats." And I knew then, my defining choice wasn't just to fight for myself. It was to turn this storm into a shelter for every woman they'd tried to erase. The Senate hearing was a crack in the dam. The water rushed fast after that. Within days, Graham's untouchable name appeared in headlines laced with words he'd once sworn would never stick to him. Fraud, laundering, conspiracy. But collapse isn't a single boom, it's a series of small, humiliating snaps. First came the donors. 6 CEOs quietly withdrew from his mentorship programs, statements full of deep concern. Then came the banks, freezing assets one by one. And then, the photo. Graham, hair uncombed, ducking into a black SUV while reporters shouted his name like it was a curse. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. Because winning isn't the same as healing. That hollow shifted when Monique slid a folder across the bungalow's table one morning. Inside were incorporation papers. At the top, the Phoenix Trust. "You always said the storm nearly drowned you," she said. "So let's make something that keeps others afloat." And so we did. With Asha's spreadsheets, Jax's stubborn loyalty, Monique's steel, and yes, even Jennifer's redemption arc, we built the bones of a foundation: legal aid for women tangled in financial abuse, emergency housing, workshops on recognizing coercion in contracts and conversations alike. The first meeting was in a church basement, folding chairs and instant coffee. 5 women came, each with her own story, each with the same haunted look I once saw in my own mirror. By the end of the night, that hollow inside me had shifted again, into something sturdier. Freedom. Because freedom wasn't just Cole in handcuffs or Graham on the evening news. Freedom was standing in front of those women, telling them, "You're not crazy, you're not weak, you're not alone." Outside rain tapped the windows, soft and steady. Not a storm this time, just weather. And for the first time in years, I could breathe in its rhythm without fear. The federal courthouse in Portland looked nothing like the family court where I'd first faced Cole. There were no tired beige walls, no flickering fluorescent lights. This place was all marble, glass, and gravity. A building made to remind you that justice wasn't just personal, it was national. Cole's trial began 6 months after his arrest. By then, the papers had labeled him the doc husband, and his face, once polished for investor brochures, was now grainy mugshots and courtroom sketches. I took the stand on day 4. Monique sat at the prosecution's table, her presence a steadying weight. Across from me, Cole looked thinner, suit sagging at the shoulders, but his eyes still burned with that same contempt. "Ms. Porter," the prosecutor began, "did the defendant abandon you at a riverside dock on October 14th? "Yes," I said. My voice didn't shake. "And what did he say to you at that time?" I lifted my chin. "That I needed to walk it off. That there were lessons that don't settle unless you suffer for them." The courtroom went still. Cole smirked faintly, as if proud of his cruelty. But then the prosecutor pressed play. "Doc lesson.wav." His own voice filled the room, cold and clear. The jury flinched. His smirk cracked. But the trial wasn't just about me. It was about millions laundered through shell accounts, elderly clients swindled, the cake slices Graham had helped design. Witness after witness tied Cole's crimes to Graham's network. And then, on day 12, Graham played his last card. His attorneys filed a motion claiming the entire case was fruit of a poisoned tree, that the evidence chain was tainted because I had been the one to collect much of it, that I had entrapped my own husband. For a breath, the courtroom buzzed with the possibility, but Monique stood, calm as a lake. "Your Honor," she said, "we anticipated this. Every document, every recording, every ledger has been verified by independent forensic experts and sealed by federal agents. The only thing poisoned here is Mr. Deacon's reputation." The judge agreed. Motion denied. Graham's mask slipped in that instant, and for the first time, he looked less like a kingmaker and more like an old man staring down the end of his empire. The verdict came 2 days later. Guilty, on all counts. Cole dropped his head into his hands. Graham stared straight ahead, jaw tight. As I left the courthouse, reporters swarmed. "Leah, do you have any final words?" I paused, the rain misting just enough to cool my face. "Yes," I said. "He thought leaving me in the storm would break me. But storms don't break women like me. They remake us. And I intend to make sure no one else has to learn that lesson the way I did." The microphones bobbed forward, but I didn't say more. I didn't need to. Because for the first time, the story had closed, and I was the one writing the final line. 1 year later, the storm was only a memory. One I carried, yes, but no longer one that carried me. The Phoenix Trust Foundation had outgrown the church basement. We rented a converted brick warehouse in downtown Portland. Big windows, creaky floors, walls painted with murals of wings and rivers. On opening day, 40 women showed up. By summer, that number doubled. By fall, we had waiting lists. Jennifer ran peer groups twice a week, her voice raw and honest when she told her story. Jax built a safe transport program, quiet vans that ferried women and children in the middle of the night when leaving was the only choice. Asha trained accountants to trace missing money hidden by abusers. Monique lectured at law schools about coercive finance and the new precedents we'd set. And me? I told the story. Not just mine, but theirs. In living rooms, in hearings, in quiet coffee shops with women who thought they were crazy until I said, "No, you're not. I've been there too." Cole was serving 15 years. Graham faced federal charges so sprawling they'd coined a new name for his network, the Deacon Web. Both men's empires had collapsed under the weight of their own greed. But what mattered more was what rose in their absence. One rainy evening, because of course it was raining, I sat by the big warehouse window after a group session. Outside, the city lights blurred like watercolor. Inside, the sound of women laughing drifted from the kitchen, a sound I once thought I'd never hear again. I opened my journal and wrote the only words that felt right. The storm did not end me, it freed me, and it built a shelter wide enough for others. And now, dear listener, that's where I leave you. If you've stayed with me through this journey, thank you. If you believe no one deserves to be abandoned in a storm, literal or metaphorical, then please, subscribe to this channel, share this story, and ring the notification bell so others can find hope when they need it most. Because next week we'll bring you another story, one that starts with a forgotten letter, a locked drawer, and a husband who thought secrets stayed hidden forever. And trust me, you won't want to miss it.